In October of 1944, General Douglas MacArthur made good on his promise and made his triumphant return to the Philippines following his retreat back in March of 1942. This time, the Americans were much more well-equipped and take back the Philippines from the Japanese. As the island hopping from nation to nation continued, the battle for Iwo Jima was next on the Americans' lists. In February of 1945, the United States targeted Iwo Jima, wanting to use it as a refueling base as well as an emergency landing site for bombers. This was also important to the United States as it was one of the 3 air bases that were used by the kamikaze pilots, the Japanese pilots who intentionally crashed their planes into American ships. While Iwo Jima was an ideal location, securing it proved to be more difficult. First off, the island was comprised mostly of volcanic ash, which made it very difficult to maneuver. Another problem was the fact that the Japanese had already had its military stationed on the island. Gunners were set up on the mountain and were shooting down on the Americans. Over 25,000 casualties took place, meaning 1 in 3 soldiers were either killed or wounded during the Battle of Iwo Jima. After 3 days of intense fighting, the Americans were finally able to secure the top of the mountain on Mount Suribachi. Initially, the flag that was put up to signify American success was a smaller flag. Later, a larger flag replaced it, and it was here that Joe Rosenthal took his iconic photo. In May of 1945, the largest and final campaign of the war in the Pacific took place at Okinawa. It was here that the United States learned what it would look like if they were to invade Japan. The invasion at Okinawa lasted 3 weeks, with the Japanese digging in and making it hard for the United States to move forward. The Japanese gave it everything they had, using ships and kamikaze fighting. U.S. casualties reached 50,000, while 150,000 Japanese, or 1/3 of the island population, were killed. It was these numbers that would be one of the factors President Truman would use to drop the atomic bomb. One of the plans on the table for the United States was Operation Downfall, the ground invasion of Japan. While it was planned out, the actual invasion did not take place. It was estimated that if it were to happen, there would be over 1 million casualties. In July of 1945, the Potsdam Conference took place. This was the meeting of the Allied leaders, U.S. President Harry Truman, Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin, and the new British Prime Minister Clement Attlee. The purpose of the meeting was to outline what was to happen to Germany now that the war in Europe was over, and what was to be done with Japan. In Germany, once the war was over, the Nazi leaders would be put on trial as war criminals, and the Germans would be required to pay 10% of the $200 billion of damage done. It was here at the Potsdam Conference that Truman told Stalin that the United States had the atomic bombs. Unbeknownst to Truman, Stalin already knew this. The next topic at the Potsdam Conference was what to do with Japan. Everything needed to be in order before making a final decision. Many different factors were considered when deciding which course of action to take. If the United States decided to invade, it would result in a much longer war with casualties in the millions. The fear was also that, given their dedication to the Emperor, the people of Japan would not stop fighting. When all was said and done, it was decided the atomic bomb would be dropped. The atomic bomb is credited with ending the war in the Pacific. One of the people credited with helping with the atomic bomb is a German scientist named Albert Einstein. In the 1930s, Einstein was recruited by Adolf Hitler to figure out a way to generate power from the atom. Fearful of what Germany was capable of, Einstein sent letters to President Roosevelt warning about the atomic bomb and offering his help. Einstein was able to sneak out of Germany to the United States and offered his advice on the project. The actual building of the atomic bomb was a top-secret endeavor known as the Manhattan Project. Work took place in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Los Alamos, New Mexico. The head of the project, J. Robert Oppenheimer, would spend the rest of his life bothered by what was created under his watch. In July of 1945, the atomic bomb was successfully tested in New Mexico, and the United States was prepared to use it. On August 6, 1945, Paul Tibbets flew his bomber, the Enola Gay, from Tinian, an island of the Pacific, and dropped the atomic bomb known as Little Boy onto the Japanese city of Hiroshima. In a flash, 80,000 people were instantly killed. By the end of the year, 90 to 166,000 deaths will be totaled from the dropping of the bomb. And yet, Japan still did not surrender. The United States decided to drop another bomb. Initially, the plan was for the bomb to be dropped on Kokura. However, due to weather conditions, pilots in the bomber Boxcar were forced to drop the bomb Fat Man on the port city of Nagasaki. Between 39 and 80,000 people were killed. While the United States waited for a response, contemplating dropping a third bomb, the Japanese finally surrendered on September 2, 1945, on board the USS Missouri, marking the date as VJ Day, officially ending World War II. Unlike the Nazi war crime trials at Nuremberg, the Japanese war crime trials were held with much less fanfare. No charges were sent for what happened in Korea or China, as these were separate trials. The most notable defendant, General Hideki Tojo, was found guilty of his crimes and hanged as punishment. Most notably missing as a defendant was Emperor Hirohito, who was not tried at all. Because the emperor was viewed as a godlike figure, the United States feared that if he was found guilty and sentenced to death, the Japanese people would rebel and any hopes of rebuilding the country would fail. The Japanese war trials closed the chapter of World War II. While the war itself was over, its impact on the world would be felt throughout the rest of the 20th century.